I'm going to try and take you through this little bit of a tour of what I call orthopedics, which is starting at the beginning, moving through the diagnostic imaging and all the advances we've made there with MRI and ultrasound and things like that, and then end up with just a little bit about surgery just because, and how that all relates to the dressage horse, okay? Now, before I get started on that journey through dressage, I need to start out with a few pet peeves that I have. And I thought about whether I'd bring these up. I even asked Risa there standing behind the camera whether I should bring these pet peeves up. And she said, why not? They're going to make a little video and I'll get out to some people. I asked Dr. Clayton, Hillary Clayton, I said, should I do this? And she said, yes, go for it. So some good advice, and I thought I'd go with my dressage pet peeves. Number one, if your horse has been doing very well, and suddenly he's not doing what you asked him to. For 2 years, he's been doing great. Half passes are perfect. And suddenly he quits doing it. Don't get a longer spur. Have your veterinarian look first and see if there's a physical reason for that. Okay? And I've been saying this for 20 years. I started out with the 4-H kids because the worst thing is to have somebody out there beating a horse that won't do something, and yet the horse did it perfectly for 10 years. And suddenly he decided not to do it. Well, it's possible. But what I prefer is that you look for a physical reason first. And so this was just reiterated twice in the last 2 weeks. A client came in and said the horse was not acting right for the past 6 months. She didn't listen to her own feeling about that. She listened to her trainer who said, get the longer spur, get the longer whip, and make him do it. 6-year-old that she raised from a foal, and she knew this horse. And then when he couldn't pick up his front legs, now that's just rare. You can't get the horse to pick up the front legs, and that was a farrier. And so he finally came in 3 weeks ago, and there's his bone scan, and we'll talk about bone scanning later. This is his spine and ribs and kidney, and that's all normal. But this big, huge hot spot right here, that's the withers, so his head's up here, and his tail is over here. And that big, huge hot spot right in the center there is right underneath the saddle. He had overriding dorsal spinous processes. In a 6-year-old, that's not going to be wear and tear. That's probably an injury, okay? And I tell you, this kind of thing has happened a lot in my 20 years of doing this. She was literally in tears. I showed her this picture, and she was in tears saying, and I was like, well, it's not that bad yet. It's not good, but it's not that bad yet. And she said, no, but I've been beating this horse for 6 months because I was told to, because he was misbehaving. And that hurts me as an individual and as a professional, because horses are such wonderful animals. And yes, they can get an attitude, and yes, they can change, and sometimes they need discipline. Okay, I'm all right with all of that. But if he's been doing something a certain way and then he quits, let's look for a physical reason first. And the other one just was this last week, and she's a young professional in my area who's very talented, got very good horses, and the horse has a sacroiliac problem, and we'll talk a little bit about that today. But they were getting that addressed, and the horse was getting better, and then the right hind lameness became more evident, and we were trying to figure out what the right hind limb lameness, and I told her I thought it was a bit of a hyperextension, and all of a sudden there's a pause, and this is a young lady in her early 20s that I've worked with quite a bit over the years, and there's a long pause, and that's not like her because she's way more talkative than I am. And I said, okay, what's that pause all about? And she said, well, I now know how he did it. And I said, okay, what? She goes, against my better judgment, my new client said to me, make him do it, make him do it. And she's like, no, there's something wrong. And they said, make him do it. So she started pushing harder with her legs, and she's a very strong rider at her young age. And the horse was violently kicking out with his right hind. So he would violently kick out 10 times every time she rode him. Did that for about a week. And so when I said hyperextension to her, she said, uh-oh, I think I created that. And she says, never again will I let someone external influence what I think is wrong with the horse. She said, I knew something was wrong with him. So we've got the sacroiliac issue starting to go under control, and now she's got a right hind limb lameness to address. And I don't think it's going to be serious, but she's upset with herself because she didn't listen to her gut instinct that there was something wrong with the horse. Okay, so that's that one. This one's way more controversial, but I have to go there. Why are our American horses so overweight in the dressage discipline? Okay, and maybe there's metabolic, okay? And that's one thing that I can tell you I'm excited about over the last 20 years, is because when I graduated 20 years ago from Michigan State, who was leaders in endocrinology and metabolic disease in small animals at the time, they told me, and I'm sorry, Dr. Clayton's there now, but she's different and she's changed all that. But they said metabolic disease didn't occur in horses. And I'm seeing, particularly dressage horses, they seem to be somehow maybe predisposed. And there were no answers at the time. There's a whole lot of research being done that's out of my realm because, again, I'm orthopedics. But if the horse looks like this, a lot of them end up going lame because they have a problem. Now, again, very controversial, so make sure that you're right on the slides here, okay? Now, I am not a ballet aficionado at all, okay? But this just looks wrong to me, okay? I have a problem with that. Ballet is very athletic, and anybody that tells me that dressage is not an athletic endeavor has never sat on a dressage horse. It is amazing what you guys have to do on a daily basis and what you have to ask of these horses. Now, I am not on the payroll for Dr. Clayton, but she just gave me the book 10 minutes ago, so I haven't read it, but she and I were going through it. This is a fabulous book, and I think that's what the book signing they were talking about, and it's addressing the horse as a whole unit. And I'm going to get off that picture, okay? I'm going to go to this one here. It's addressing all those muscles. So this is my blurry photo. I was just so excited when Anki won that year in Amsterdam in 2006. There she is in the little post parade or whatever they call it at the end when she's her victory gallop. And I don't see any overweight horses in that picture. Maybe way in the back here, but I think that one might be from the United States. I'm not sure. I'm sorry to go on about this, but the bottom line is what I don't understand is in my practice, I see a lot of show jumpers and a lot of dressage horses, and some of them have similar breeding, and yet they'll walk in and they'll be huge. I've been told that it's a rounder horse when they have more weight on them. And yeah, that's round, but come on. Round him up with the muscles and the riding and make them look like this. I like these horses. For anyone that didn't make it to Amsterdam in 2006, she had a wonderful ride. It was head and shoulders above all the other horses. I don't know if you've seen it on video or were there in person. It was really a phenomenal ride, much better than the 2005 ride in my opinion. But okay, so to my last. No, I think I have two more quick little pet peeve here. This one was my technician's horse when I was in Glasgow, and it was a field hunter. And this is when she was in shape, and like a month later, she would deteriorate to this. She would just kind of go, and it very quickly. A lot of horses respond differently to training. Some respond differently to a layoff period. Within a month, this horse would just let go, this big, huge, what people might call the hay belly and whatever else going on there. So I started to look into this, and the reason why is a lot of what I deal with in lameness in the limbs comes from top-line issues, okay? And I will admit to you that 20 years ago in my first 4-H talk, I said that the back was there just to sit on, and the neck was just there as a space holder between the mouth and the hands. Whoa, how wrong was that? Especially in this discipline. This is an entire being. It's an entire package of muscles and impulsion and everything else. And if you don't get the horses totally in shape that way. So what I did here when I was looking into this is, okay, this horse is fit, but I don't quite like his top line and the way he's a little bit strung out in his hindquarters. So I took him into Photoshop, and I did this like 12 years ago, and I still use this a lot because I like what it did. I took him into Photoshop, I traced out his hindquarters, and then I rotated about 10 degrees up and said, okay, now I really don't like this horse's top line, and this horse is really going to have problems. First through this region, lower back, sacroiliac, then into the stifle, okay, and then into the hock/origin of suspensory region. So a lot of what we see in lameness through this region, in my opinion, will emanate from top-line issues. But I then took the same horse, rotated 10 degrees the opposite way, and I like this horse now. Okay, this is the same horse, obviously, rotated under, and she's standing. She's got a good top line. She curves over the top. She curves under. She will have a much easier time with all the movements that you ask of her, whether she's jumping big fences or she's doing half pass and pee-offs. Okay, so that's just that little one. And then the final pet peeve before we get into the meat of it is the big the foals, okay? These are two different breeds, okay? And I'm going to stop this one for a second and let you watch this one. Now, granted, there's a slight difference in age. This one's a little bit younger, too. But look at the joint movement. Look at how, it just kind of looks like, oh, boy, I don't want to be riding dressage on that thing. It's just like, okay? That's a young racehorse. Okay, that's a young quarter horse racehorse. Now, look at this thing. Look at that. Boing, 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 boing. I mean, that's not taught. That's this horse's breeding. In fact, that's a Brianna foal. And it's phenomenal, the difference in breeding there. And what I can tell you is that we need to recognize those differences. And I'm not saying quarter horses and thoroughbreds can't do dressage, because they can, okay? But more importantly for me, I'm just going to stop the movement for a second, is then to talk about maturity as well. And that is what I run into, second most common issue in my practice right now among the lameness cases. First is foot lamenesses, so we're going to talk a bit about that. But second is strange kind of gait deficits, top line, hind end issues, and young warm bloods. And the point is that it's a common problem because they mature differently than the other breeds. And that's just, I've felt that way for 20 years. We're starting to get some data to confirm that. But I don't care if the horse is 7 years old, and I don't care if he stands 17 hands. That doesn't mean that horse is mature. And I guess I'm just hesitating because this is a little bit controversial too. But I mean, the horses that I'm seeing are getting to the upper levels in this discipline faster now than they used to 20 years ago, in my opinion. And so I'm not saying that's bad, but I'm not sure that I think it's the right trend yet. Because, and this is a positive about dressage, dressage is the one and only discipline that I work on that you guys are hoping that your horses last till their 20s. Okay, I mean, if you can have a horse out there that's 20 years old still doing upper level movements, it's possible and it's outstanding. You don't find that in racehorses, you don't find that in show jumpers, you don't find, for the most part. Dressage, we're looking at longevity of career, which to me then indicates that we have to be careful when they're youngsters, and youngsters sometimes extends right up into 5, 6, and 7 on some of the warm bloods, and it's an individual. It depends on how that horse is maturing. You can make that decision, your trainer can make it, you can talk to your veterinarian about it, try to figure out whether this horse is ready to go on. Nothing about radiographs, nothing about bone scans, none of that, in my opinion, can tell you whether that horse is mature enough to go on. It's about the horse. And that's all I can say, is that in some of my caseload, horses will be presented for not doing things well, particularly in the hind limbs. Sometimes it's coming in the front foot, let's say, but it's a lameness, it's evident in the front foot, but in my opinion it's coming from behind in an immature horse that's getting heavy on the forehand. If you stop or you get it addressed or you at least slow down the program, I think you can totally arrest any problems that are developing and get a very sound and athletic horse. And what's happening now, in what I'm seeing more of, at least in maybe it's Southern California, but this, what's the term in racing is called pin hooking, where you buy a young horse with the idea that you're going to train it for a while and turn around and sell it at a profit. It doesn't always work. Florida's one of the most active industries in the pin hooking in thoroughbred racehorses. But I'm seeing that a little bit in dressage now, where people will go across to Europe, find a very nice prospect, buy it, bring it back. They buy it at a very low price because the horse is not trained yet. They bring it back with the idea, we're going to just put 2 or 6 months on it and then sell it again. It's a great idea if that works, but I'll just caution you that I think in dressage, in particular, that's a risky endeavor more than ever, because some horses, you just start to train them and they can't do it yet. Doesn't mean they're not going to be able to do it, but in my opinion, they can't do it now. And if you keep pushing the horse, you will end up with a lameness. You might end up with a serious injury, but you don't necessarily have it to start out with.